Go ahead and call to order the regular meeting of the Open Space and Conservation Commission for Wednesday, January 11, 2023. If I could have everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, is there anybody here from the public that would like to say something that is in regards to any item that is not on the agenda for tonight? Okay, hearing none. Okay, we're going to go ahead and reopen our public hearing for Vessel Real Estate Holdings.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I'm just going to ask that. There we go, on cue. I'll just give that a moment to start, and I'll actually dive right in. Hello, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Nice to see you all again. Happy New Year. My name's Andrea Gomes, and I'm an attorney at Hinckley Allen, here again tonight on behalf of the applicant. With me again tonight are Josh Levy, the Executive Vice President of Vessel, George Loken, Certified Professional Wetland Scientist and Registered Soil Scientist with REMA Ecological Services, Matt Bruton, Professional Engineer with BL Companies, and my colleague, Attorney Christian Mines, also from Hinckley Allen. So the Commission should have before it the supplemental materials that we submitted to Mr. Sopelak on January 5th. They consist of a tabbed package with 2 tabs, as well as revised plan sheets. I will leave the plan revision specifics, if you will, to Mr. Logan and Mr. Bruton, but I will forecast their presentation by noting that what we did with this set of supplemental materials was accomplish 3 goals. Number 1, and importantly, we eliminated the ponding that occurred with the prior plan to the west beyond the property line, and actually improved ponding both to the west and to the south over existing conditions, and Mr. Bruton will talk about that. We incorporated any outstanding SLR and commission requests into the plan set, and we also clarified our proposal and married, if you will, the plans, the civil plan set with the proposal from Mr. Logan as our wetland scientist and soil scientist. So, and in particular, I'll highlight for the Commission, we revised sheet CC1, that's the conservation area plan, to, we hope, it clearly explain what we're doing within the wetland area. Again, that will be summarized for the Commission shortly. So the punchline here is that all the revisions proposed by staff, by the peer reviewer SLR, and by the Commission have been accepted and incorporated, and no adverse impacts to the value and function of the wetland are proposed as a result of the plan. Before I turn it over to my team, I will note for the Commission that we've included also at tab 1 of that tabbed package, page 4, a proposed condition of approval regarding snow maintenance and removal. I believe it was you, Commissioner Kelly, who had requested the condition. And in that condition, the applicant agrees to cart any snow off-site that cannot be stored in that snow storage area designated on the site plan. We've also agreed to use organic/biodegradable materials in treating snow and ice on site to further protect the wetlands. So that's in there. The Commission can certainly impose that as a condition, but we've provided the text. Madam Chair, I will now turn it over to Mr. Logan for, and then Mr. Bruton for a summary of the revisions. I will then bookend the presentation with some closing comments, if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Oh, and I apologize. I forgot one thing. I have hard copies of the PowerPoint presentation that the Commission has here. I will just hand them here for the record and ask that you pass them down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, and Happy New Year. George Logan for the record, REMA Ecological Services. I think my qualifications have already been put into the record. Again, professional wetland scientist, certified soil scientist, and I've been working in the field for probably about 35 years. What I'd like to bring to your attention is the, how do I go to the next one? Click. There we go. There's two plans that I want to quickly go over and sort of point out some of the things we've done to clarify or to supplement our record. And it's going to be CC1 first, and then LL1, which will be the second one. As you can see there, I hope, or in the package that you have before you, what we try to do is to sort of separate the direct wetland impacts from the mitigation plan. So you have a little set here on the bottom left side, which just looks at the direct wetland impacts. And so hopefully that will be a little more helpful. We kind of took a better look because there were some lines that were a little confusing, and we would admit that. And so I think this has now clarified everything for us. The permanent impact, the permanent direct impact, so that's the one that's going to be there, is 220 square feet. The temporary direct impact, which is the areas that are graded, but which will be restored later with wetland plants and seed mix, is 560 square feet. And we, of course, have the 86 linear feet of intermittent watercourse impact, which we had a lot of discussion of in the past few meetings. There is an area that, see if I can, I don't know how I can point it out. You see the second pipe, and Mr. Burton will discuss that a little more, the one that's more on the upper portion of the plan, which will be receiving some of the water, and he will explain how that's helping. But in pulling that area back in the grading, we are actually creating about plus or minus 100 square feet of wetland. So that means that the net impact, a direct impact to the wetland, is 120 square feet, plus or minus. So if you look at the legend, we have, again, the permanent impact is the top, the little stippled polygon there, if you will, 220 square feet. Then the next one is the temporary impact. Then the one that's more hatched is the planting outside of the wetland area. Then the wetland enhancement area. And the wetland enhancement area is that green area that's basically the one that we will be planting up, removal of invasives everywhere within any area that, even in the wetland buffer, if you will, the upland area next to the wetland. And I'll refer to that in a moment. And then we show the piping that's going to, well, it's going to be, and Mr. Burton will explain how that is going to all flow together. But in essence, we're piping the intermittent watercourse, which we called it the drainage swale, as you recall, that discussion. And so we're preserving its conveyance, which was the major function of that particular feature. If you flip over, I will flip over to the, oops, where's the next one? Oh, there it is. I went too fast. This is a landscaping plan, and you see there the little red bubble. What I had to do is revise my planting plan based on some of the discussions that we had with SLR to make sure that everything's in the right place. And so, when we as wetland scientists come up with a mitigation plan, and then the landscape architect is doing his part, and sometimes we're kind of a little bit in a conflict, so now we've completely married it. Everyone's satisfied that the plant's going to be where they need to be, and the sufficient notes are on the plan telling us exactly what's going to happen. And of course, as you recall, in one of my reports, I had additional notes of how the implementation of this plan will take place. So again, one of the things that I want to remind this commission is that in our professional opinion, the functions and the values that this wetland and intermittent watercourse currently confer will be maintained. So there's no, in my professional opinion, adverse impacts on functions and values. And as a matter of fact, I can go as far as to say that in my professional opinion, there will be a net enhancement because of the removal of invasives and also removal of the junk that still remains within the wetland, even though the property owner had done as good a job as possible. And I know that because I compared before and after, because as you recall, I was on this property many years ago. A lot of the junk has been removed. Some remains, particularly in the wetland, that will be removed, and then invasives, and then a robust planting plan. And at the end of the day, I think this is going to be a net enhancement as far as the function and value, but certainly not an adverse impact based on what is being proposed. I will leave it there. I will be here to answer any questions that you may have, and now I'm going to turn it over to our civil engineer.
Good evening, everybody. Again, for the record, my name is Matthew Bruton. I'm a professional engineer with BL Companies out of our Hartford, Connecticut office, 100 Constitution Plaza in Hartford. As George and Andrea said, I'll walk you through some of the plan changes. I have the majority of the setup on the screen here. Obviously, there was a couple of points that you guys, we heard loud and clear, you wanted looked at and adjusted, and they reverberated through each plan. So you'll see them boxed in red here. But I'll try to explain them as we go through each one. So the first one here, just a snippet of our general notes plan. Obviously wanted to put this right front and center about the operation and maintenance of the property. So that includes items like stormwater management, making sure the system is cleaned and maintained as designed. I think we discussed a lot about that, how that system needs to work from day one to year 10, 20, and beyond. Also site maintenance, dealing with parking lots, dealing with landscaping, dealing with snow removal, dealing with trash collection, outdoor storage, things of that nature. So that's the point of this little revision, putting those things there. The second plan here is the demolition plan. Again, revised to match what we've worked out with the wetland scientist on some of the revisions in this wetland area. There was, I believe, a comment about the site being clear cut. Obviously, that's not the case. There is obviously this pocket in the corner here that we're looking to restore and enhance. So this is a plan showing the updated limited disturbance and the areas that we are touching. Conservation area plan, obviously George explained a lot of that one there, so I'll skip to the next one here. So this one and the next one are the biggest. Obviously, I heard Andrea say, and we heard you guys at the last hearing, that the ponding on-site, off-site, to the west and to the south was a concern of yours. So what we did was we went back and looked at how we could improve that situation to give you guys the best application we could. So what we ended up doing is revising the layout of the underground stormwater management system, which allows us to add another inlet to the system. So water that is flowing from the west, which is up the page from that the topography and the wetland that we assume continues off-site, now has two entry pipes into our system before being stored there and then discharging down to Main Street. So if you remember the discussion last time, the DOT pipe in Main Street is set, it's fixed, certain diameter, we can't change that. But what we can do is allow the water to come into our system more. So what this has done is eliminated ponding to the west, and it greatly improved the ponding to the south. So in this graphic here, you can see the red diagonal hatches. That was previous ponding, existing conditions as they sit today with no improvements on the property. So you can see, it just went up to the western boundary to the top of the page. And then to the south, on the left-hand side of the page, there was significant ponding in that 100-year event into the parking lot potentially of the abutter to the south. With this revised system, with an additional inlet pipe to allow us to attract more water to our side, the ponding is now going to be in blue. So obviously to the west there, to the top of the page, that's concentrating that ponding water in the wetland, and it stays within our boundary of our property, not to adversely impact the neighbor to the west in any way. And then to the left-hand side of the page, to the south there, you can see the blue is dramatically reduced from what currently happens there today. So a major improvement from there. If you remember last time, we weren't changing that. It was going to pond. It would still pond. Now with this configuration, it's greatly reduced, which is a benefit to the abutter. Quickly, this one here is obviously with the stormwater management system being rejiggered around, we wanted to make sure utilities then were updated accordingly, so there was no conflicts between the stormwater management system and the proposed utilities. Erosion control. Obviously, this dovetails with what George spoke about and our demolition plan and levels of clearing. So this plan has been updated, obviously, to show the updated limit of disturbance, showing that we're not clear cutting this site and we're just enhancing some of those areas, and updated to match our grading and drainage, and as well as the stormwater management and the erosion and sedimentation control blankets kind of in this area. And then the landscape plan. Obviously, we've, with what George mentioned, obviously making sure our landscape plan lances up with the conservation plan for the enhancements and restoration in the stormwater management area, making sure these species are the appropriate, as George mentioned, to be placed in here. So that's kind of, let me see here. Oh, and one other item. There was a request by SLR as part of their last comments with dealing with the stormwater management system to install a trash rack at the inlet pipe, which is at the edge of the wetland. So we have added that detail to our plans per their requests. That's a good idea. We went along with it. So that should keep trash from, getting caught in the system and moving downstream. So it'd be a maintenance item for the applicant to maintain, but it's a good one to make sure that it's all front and center. Just make sure I didn't miss anything here. So, just in closing, in summary with the stormwater management, we're still mitigating peak flows. We're still matching drainage patterns. We're still providing that water quality, that 80% TSS removal. And then the big change is obviously eliminating the ponding from the residential abutter to the west. So, in my professional opinion, plan will be built and, community will operate without any adverse impacts to the wetland if we can proceed with the plan as presented. So I'll pass it back to Andrea, but we'll be happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Thank you, Matt. All right. With that summary of the plans, Madam Chair, I'd like to kick off my closing comments with a bit of a legal lesson, if I may. At the last hearing, we engaged in a bit of back and forth with the Commission regarding the meaning of adverse impacts and whether the applicant had complied with the applicable regulations and guidance and so on. So we took it upon ourselves to put in writing and with the appropriate citations precisely what the Commission is legally authorized to review here, what it's looking for. That narrative is at tab 1 of our January 5th submission, but I'll summarize it hopefully quickly now. So in short, the Commission's jurisdiction is limited to determining whether the proposed regulated activities cause an adverse impact to the value or function of the wetland. The word adverse is important here because general impacts to a regulated area are not a legally valid basis for denial. For example, loss of square footage of a wetland alone is not a valid basis for denial because you don't have that evidence of the adverse impact. The law is pretty clear as well that the adverse impact must also be likely and supported by quantitative expert evidence in the record. It can't be speculative. Simply saying that an activity may impact the wetland isn't enough. When the applicant provides evidence into the record that there will be no adverse impact and there is no evidence in the record saying otherwise, the Commission cannot legally conclude that the applicant is wrong, cannot conclude the opposite. So what I did for the Commission, just to see, you have all of these legal principles, but seeing it in action is actually quite helpful, even for lawyers as well. So I included a few cases, small case summaries for the Commission in my narrative so that the Commission could see this law in action. So for example, in 2011, the Connecticut Appellate Court found that a Wetlands Commission illegally denied an application where there was evidence in the record of sediment and siltation into the wetland, but there was no evidence showing that that sediment and siltation caused an adverse impact to the wetland function or value. The court specifically noted that the applicant's experts submitted evidence that there would be no adverse impacts. There was no evidence in the record indicating otherwise, and the court said, quote, the Commission could not conclude to the contrary. I'll note for the record that that case was also an 830G application for multifamily housing. My colleague, Tim Hollister, actually represented the applicant in that. In 2007, the appellate court also overturned a denial, again for multifamily housing, where the commission determined that the filling in of one of 4 wetlands on this parcel and the expansion of another wetland would, quote, likely impact the wetland. The commission didn't have expert evidence in the record demonstrating an adverse impact, so the denial was improper. Now, I'll veer off to the side a bit, and this is related to this legal lesson, if I may, to give a little bit of a word on feasible and prudent alternatives. It's not in my summary, but it's easily summarized verbally now. So if proposed construction will have an adverse impact on a wetland or watercourse function, that doesn't necessarily mean that the commission automatically denies. It's a matter of scale, if you will. So instead, if there is an adverse impact in the record, the law requires the applicant to explain why the impact cannot be further reduced or avoided with a feasible and prudent alternative plan. I'm getting a bit into the weeds here on process, and certainly Mr. Sopelak, as your staff member, can guide you on this. But in approving a wetlands permit, that's precisely why the commission has to make a finding that no feasible and prudent alternative exists. But importantly here, and this comes up a lot in the wetlands context, of course, is that feasible and prudent alternatives analysis is satisfied if the applicant shows no impact. And if you take a step back and think about it logically, it makes good sense, right? So how could you ask an applicant to present an alternative plan with less impact if you have no adverse impact to begin with? I will note that, and we get this question a lot, feasible and prudent alternatives doesn't mean not building the proposed building. You could always just not build, but that's not what the law requires. The commission has to look at what the applicant is proposing and determine if there's an adverse impact, and if so, if there's an alternative plan that will minimize the impact. Classic example is building a bridge over a water course instead of filling in the water course to build a road. So applying the law I just summarized to the application here, it is undisputed in the record that the function of this wetland, which our experts have, I think, properly characterized as a man-influenced drainage ditch, is the conveyance of stormwater. We have testimony from Mr. Bruton, our consulting professional engineer, which was confirmed by SLR and town staff that the site as developed will maintain existing site hydrology and improve stormwater quality over existing conditions in compliance with both town and state requirements and guidance. Moreover, as you just saw a few moments ago, the plan actually reduces ponding in the 100-year storm event, both on and off site. These are quantifiable improvements over existing conditions. In other words, put simply, the wetland serves to convey stormwater today, and it will continue to do so after the building's constructed. So we have Mr. Bruton confirming within his area of expertise that there will be no adverse impacts to the wetland. We also have testimony from Mr. Logan, our certified professional wetland scientist and registered soil scientist, that the proposed activities will not adversely impact the function and value of the wetland. He detailed for you tonight, he walked you through the conservation area plan and the landscape plan a little bit, talking about how the applicant will clean and expand the wetland area by removing invasives, incorporating new plantings, and creating an approximately 100 square foot wetland area, and also enhancing portions of the upland review area by, again, cleaning and planting. The net result of this work is a permanent direct impact within the wetland of about 120 square feet. Neither SLR nor the towns has submitted any evidence contradicting Mr. Logan's conclusions that the plan will not adversely impact the wetland. So we've got our soil scientist and wetland scientist confirming that as well. And in fact, I'll note, just for the record, as the commission knows, all town staff comments and concerns on the application have been fully addressed. I believe we did that as of October. And the applicant also fully addressed the comments and accepted the requested revisions posed by SLR. So the proposed plan will not adversely affect the wetland or watercourse on site, and the feasible and prudent alternative requirement is satisfied by avoiding any impact that would trigger that analysis in the first place. I'll remind the commission again, we've set aside feasible and prudence because no adverse impacts, but Mr. Bruton did provide testimony, I believe it was at the last public hearing and at the first night as well, that of the various site configurations considered by the applicant and discussed with town staff for the proposed development on site, all of which had greater impact than the configuration the commission has before it now. Put differently, without quantitative, relevant, expert evidence in the record that the function and value of this wetland will adversely be impacted by the proposed construction, the commission has no legal basis to deny. And the commission has no such evidence here, so it should approve the application. With that, I will thank the commission for its time and patience throughout this process. It's been a journey, but we have appreciated the commission and town staff's feedback. We think that the end result, what the commission has before it now, is a better plan than what we started with, and we're very excited about that. We are here, of course, to answer any questions that the commission may have. A friendly reminder through you, Madam Chair, that the commission needs to close the public hearing tonight, because we're out of time as of January 20th, and I don't think a special meeting is necessary, but commission has to close tonight. So if it has any questions for the applicant, now is the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I please ask IT to raise the screen, please? Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Kurz, do you have any questions, please?
Yeah, I have a question about the additional inlet pipe. It's just a question.
I'll ask Mr. Bruton to come up.
Be closer to the mic,
Sure.
please. Thank
This is
you.
about the additional inlet pipe. If you could just go back to CC1, I think it's CC1? Yes. So the additional one that you're adding up on the west, can you just explain a little bit more about how that will affect any sort of water that would be absorbed or drained through the existing wetlands and the enhancement area? Like the rate of...
So, yep. So if everyone remembers, the topography to the west, to the top of the page, just climbs up. So that's where all the water that is coming to this property is coming from. So before it came into the wetland, it was conveyed in the ditch to the DOT pipe.
Yep.
The size of that pipe limited how much water could flow into there. We obviously extended that pipe to where we are, so we could put our parking spaces over there. So the point of the additional pipe that you see on the CC1 there, the one to the west there, is to allow water two avenues to come into our system.
Yeah.
And that volume that we've created under our parking lot with our stormwater management system then allows it to pond under the parking lot in our chambers, as opposed to being backed up on the western property and the other property.
That's not my question, but thank you for reviewing that. So my question really is about the water that's coming down today. There's no pipes. There's no inlets today.
Correct.
Right? So there's a certain rate and a volume of water that goes through the existing wetlands right there today. How does that fundamentally change, or does it fundamentally change when you add the additional inlet? Does it drain it quicker? There's an event, right? And the water's going through at a certain rate today without the pipe, and that's what makes that a wetland. So does this inlet do anything to speed up the rate? To is it?
Yep, I got you. I understand the
Okay.
question. Yeah, so
I'm not an engineer, so please.
So the goal, obviously, of the stormwater management report is to make sure that we're maintaining the existing patterns and also the rate, because we don't want to flood out abutters downstream the road, anything like that. So the addition of this pipe straight it doesn't drain the site quicker or slower. It's just we're matching the pre-verse post off the property, which is to Main Street. This pipe just allows the water to, if it needs to, come into our system as opposed to back up anywhere else. If there's not a lot of water, it's not even going to engage. It'll just continue to flow through the wetland and into the other pipe that was originally placed. And again, depending on the type of storm event, duration of storm event, it can actually flow back out through that new inlet pipe back into the wetland as well. So it'll keep the wetland wet without adversely impacting Main Street, the DOT connection, or the neighbors.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Stevens.
Okay, so I won't rehash all the concerns I had previously, but I'll just add I don't know if you had a chance to see this survey map that was provided to us on our most recent packet of information, but it's basically the survey of the OC restaurant property. I don't know if it's 2399 or 2409.
Commissioner, I apologize not to interrupt, but I don't think we have that plan, so.
Town staff, Steve, did they send that out to the
I have not
engineer?
received anything.
We were all provided with a copy of it.
I can't answer it for Bob.
Okay.
So
Well, anyways, if you guys want to come see it, I'll show you. But basically, this is the OC property, that's Main Street. And there's a 12-inch pipe. Are you aware that that comes out there?
So, Mr. Stevens just showed me the plan that you guys have in front of you that shows I believe it's a catch basin in the back of their parking lot that points towards where our discharge point is.
Right.
So I didn't specifically know that pipe was there, but we did account for water from OC
Okay.
coming to our property, maintaining that drainage so that it could come and still be accepted by the
Is there
DOT.
is there an intermittent water course coming out of that pipe? Did you notice at all in the past?
I can have George maybe speak to that.
Well, and I think Ms. Kaplan and I looked at that during the sidewalk. There's another ditch, whether it's a watercourse or not, I doubt it, because I think it's also receiving water from a lot of upland areas, not from a wetland per se. And then there's a little bit of a berm, and then the water just basically either gets through a pipe, the one that you're mentioning, which was not evident in the field because I think it might be clogged.
Okay.
Yeah, but or it overflows to the existing pipe under the one that we're discharging to.
But that might be something that you'd want to add to your plans, and I don't know if that's going to change any of your calculations with anything.
Commissioner, can I just note for the record that the pipe you're talking about is on the southwest corner of
That's
the OC
correct.
Kitchen property? So
That's
it is not abutting our site. It is on the southwest corner to the property to the south, just for the record, because
That's
we
correct.
did not receive that plan.
Yep. And then also on this plan, near the south east, shows the swale that continues to concern me. That's been shown on the MDC map. And it shows it on the survey map as a swale. And actually, I was out there today again, and there's two areas with ponding water in that swale. And if you look on the survey map, it appears that it would be on your site. And in the past, a month or two ago, I was out there and I did see flowing water about 1 to 2 days after a rainstorm event. And I continue to believe that that would either be some sort of regulated area of a wetland or a water course. But again, there was water there today.
So just wanted to make for the record,
two
so it's
wet
clear again,
areas
because we don't
there
have
and
this
there.
plan.
See how it
I
shows
believe
swale?
Commissioner Stevens is discussing an area he believes is a swale on the
You're right here.
northwest corner of the parcel that's directly south of us.
That's correct. So I still am concerned about potential ponding water if you're filling in with 10 parking lot spaces, which I believe would be an adverse impact anyways. But if you're filling in that whole area and piping it, where's all this water that I saw both today and a couple months ago? And I believe Michelle Zach saw it, and also Bob Alvarado.
So-
Bob Alvarado has seen it in the past too.
So Commissioner, I'll start by
It's wet there and
saying
there.
and reminding the commission that the wetlands have been flagged by Mr. Logan
I know,
on site.
and that's
No,
what
no,
I'm saying. I think it's incorrectly shown.
Understood, Commissioner, but if I may.
Sure.
The wetlands have been flagged by Mr. Logan, and SLR, the peer reviewer, Ms. Raymond, I actually reviewed her testimony again. I believe at the last hearing you specifically asked her, Mr.
Right.
Stevens.
She said she didn't look at that area.
She said she would not, correct, because it's off-site, but
It's not. It's on the site if you look at that survey map.
So, Commissioner Stevens, you asked Ms. Raymond if she disagreed with Mr. Logan's wetland delineation on site, and she said that she did not. With respect to water ponding, I will let Mr. Bruton clarify that again. I heard, and again, I'm not the engineer here, I heard that BL has taken into account the water flowing from off-site, and the ponding exhibit that the commission has before it has improved ponding over existing conditions in the 100-year storm event.
Yeah, I'm not really convinced, though, myself. But
Well, and Commissioner Stevens, with all due respect, absent evidence, quantifiable evidence to the contrary, it's legally improper to tell the commission that you just can't believe them.
I see a water course there, and you're not showing it on the map, so.
On our site, you see a
That's
water
right.
course. We have seen no evidence of that in the record, Commissioner Stevens, and neither Ms. Raymond.
Michelle's seen it, Bob Alvarado's seen it. It's shown on the plan as a swale, and just water there.
The survey that you're pointing to here, which is the first page, looks like an existing condition survey.
That's correct.
But if you flip to the next page,
I know.
there's proposed conditions that have
Yeah.
completely changed exactly what you're talking about, where there is
Well, there
a
is
larger landscaped
But
area.
there's no basin, like some of those things haven't been installed.
Right. So, I mean, just in general, we surveyed the property. It's a stamped survey done by our licensed surveyor. We did account for water coming from the adjacent parking lot to our site, and they still have that free flow to the drainage pipe that connects to the DOT in Main Street. That's not going to be impeded, and obviously the new changes that we discussed tonight greatly improve any ponding on their property.
But I think this additional area, even if it's drainage, or even if it's not a regulated area, just even storm drainage, if it is, it's going to have nowhere to go if you fill in that whole area with the 10 parking lot spaces.
But it's been,
We're not filling anything on an adjacent property.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about on your site where you're filling it in. This drainage swale, which I believe is a water course, is now going to have nowheres to outlet because you're filling that all in.
I don't see that swale being on our property, even from this survey.
Well, it shows it right on there.
It shows it close to the property line between the existing pavement edge and the property line. If I go forward and the other plan, which is the next span and page, even if that wasn't constructed exactly how this is shown, there's a much greater green space between our edge of our property line and the edge of parking that's there. So I think this is a survey from 2007. Obviously, we're, only surveying stuff on a property that is under control
Well,
of the applicant.
Like I said, on that survey map, it shows the swale, and I'm just going by a survey map.
can you point out where the swale is? For the record, counsel for the applicant.
I mean, this is the swale identified on ours. I believe he's talking about.
And I've discussed this numerous times in all the past meetings, and it's shown on the MDC map also.
Or Dave, somebody was asking.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I may, first, I apologize for you not getting copies. You can have mine. I can obviously get more. And the reason that this was included was Commissioner Stevens asked if the adjacent property was flagged for wetlands, and these were the plans, and no, and the answer was no. Yeah, when they came in with that plan in '07 or whatever it was never flagged and didn't go through wetlands.
But by the abutting property owner, not this
The OC.
applicant, just to be
No,
clear.
the OC.
And nor are we required to flag off-site wetlands, as the commission understands. And I do hope the commission, because I'm catching up as well, if I may, so I do hope the commission heard and understood Mr. Bruton's discussion about the first sheet from 2007, so the topographic survey versus the site grading and utilities plan, and where the alleged swale is located, which appears to be off of our property line. So I hope the commission heard that and understood that. It's certainly in the record.
Yeah, and both plans don't show any existing wetland, recreated wetland, or enhanced wetland, restored wetland, so.
But the swale does exist, because I was out there today. There is a
Yeah,
swale.
I'm not contending that a swale
and
doesn't
it's
exist. I think
shown
we've
on
all
this-
seen it.
It's shown on this survey map as on your property.
And where does that swale go in relation to their property? I thought it ended up coming in and connecting to the intermittent stream.
It does.
Correct.
It does, yeah. And there's two, I was out there this afternoon, there's two wet spots where I saw water flowing like a month and a half ago. It was a couple days after a
When
rainstorm.
we were out there was a lot of water in
Yeah,
that.
it probably is about 40 feet in length that runs parallel to the OC restaurant property, and then, which is probably right around the property line, and then it heads onto our site.
Right, so
Or your side, I should say.
any water from the OC between our property line or even on our property line to the edge of the pavement, we accounted for their water making it to this ultimate discharge point, and that catch basin and outlet control structure that we have on our property adjacent to Main Street would still allow water to be conveyed to that point. That was taken as part of our stormwater
I can't
management
see how
design.
it could be if you're filling in 10 parking lot spaces there. You're cutting off that flow that's going into the existing main channel on your site.
I mean, I think from what I remember, there's still a little bit of a depression swale on their property that still gets it to that corner.
So that's all the questions I have at this point.
Okay, Commissioner Brown.
Yeah, I would like to speak to Mr. Bruton for a second. I have a question. May I
Commissioner
say-
Brown, I apologize.
Yeah, no
One-
problem.
If we may, Commissioner, just one moment. We're
Yeah, no-
playing catch up, so.
No problem.
Thank you.
I apologize.
Yep. Oh, no problem. You were busy. This has to do with the revised ponding exhibit from the PowerPoint.
Yep, I can move it back. Yep.
Okay. So you're reducing the ponding, and you said that less ponding greatly improves. Could you give me a definition of improves?
Yes, so the great improvement, obviously, to the south, which is the left-hand side of the page, is you can see from the red there, that's the level of we thought water would pond in the 100-year event. That clearly goes into the lawn and the parking lot driveway of the OC. So that's a detriment to them. It's an icing hazard. It's a maintenance hazard. It would greatly speed up the parking lot deteriorating. So being able to accommodate more water on our property allows that ponding to be less from a safety perspective and also from a maintenance perspective as well. And then to the north, obviously, we heard your concerns about water ponding past our property line to that western abutter. We do contend that the wetland continues up there, so we were keeping water in a wetland, but we didn't want to have any potential adverse impacts on more ponding in the wetland than was, as existing conditions. So I'm saying it's greatly improved because it's we're improving conditions to the south and not making any conditions worse to the west.
Okay, so it's from a perspective of people and people's property.
Absolutely.
Does this, though, the water recharge groundwater, help plants grow?
Absolutely, yeah. So the items that we addressed originally as part of the stormwater management design of mitigating peak flows, stormwater quality management, that TSS removal, all of those things are still in place. So it is, water is still flowing into the wetland. We're still conveying it to the DOT system. Any water that's coming off of our impervious area, our roof, our parking lot, that it's all being treated prior to discharge. So yes, obviously it will help to keep water in this wetland for the enhancement and restoration we're planning to do, and we'll still continue to convey water to other wetlands and water courses and any resources off the site.
I'm just thinking in terms of the ponded area itself that's no longer going to be ponded. Is that a positive for things that are living there or not?
I mean, you can see here in terms of that area that we're keeping, the red and the blue are almost spot on.
And Commissioner, keep in mind, this is for the 100-year storm
Correct.
event. It's not a day-to-day occurrence.
Yeah.
And I will ask Mr. Logan to confirm that the slight reduction in ponding, again, we kept it within our property line, which is what the commission indicated needed to happen at the last hearing, won't impact the value and function of the wetland.
Yeah, and I think there was a question that kind of dovetails with both of you, and that is, are we changing the hydrology of the wetland day to day? And the answer is no. This is just for the 100-year storm event. So the hydrology of the wetland will be maintained.
Okay, no further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Vice Chairman Whalen.
Yes, with your new plan with that upper inlet to take some of the water, why weren't you designing it going east and west like the first one that you planned?
You mean up and down the page?
Correct.
Yeah. The goal is just to give it just a different access point with the topography that we have with the orientation of the parking lot. Just to give it another way in. No specific reason why it couldn't come in a different direction, but we thought this made sense given the orientation of the parking lot and some of the topography and some of the, expanded areas that we were looking at. But the east to west, there was really no significant bearing on the direction of the proposed pipe.
When you think the flow of that water is going east to west, the wetland area itself?
Well, you're right. The water does obviously flow from top of page to bottom page, but in a 100-year event, the diameter of the pipe that's receiving this in DOT is stopping all this flow. So it's ponding. It's not actually flowing at that point. It's building up, and we're allowing it to just an area to escape into our system.
Wouldn't it accept more water, though, if it was going east to west?
Not necessarily. I mean, the original one that's going, east to west, that makes sense because in that 2-year storm, the 10-year storm, we're not expecting a lot of ponding in those situations. You want it to flow linearly. This secondary pipe that we've added is for when it's stuck, it's jammed up, and we're looking for it to have a route to expand into our system as opposed to one of the abutters. It's an overflow. Yeah.
So that's only for the 100-year storm, more or less?
We needed to add that to help the 100-year event.
Okay.
Yep.
Another question. Your material, the supplemental says it's a 31 spot parking places, but your site plans are saying 33 parking spots.
It's 33 parking spots. If there's
Okay.
something in there that says 31, we apologize. 30 units, 33 31 bedroom units with 33 proposed parking spots.
Very good.
Too handicapped.
Okay, yeah.
That might be
Which
the
is fine,
confusion,
but it
Commissioner Brown.
says, yeah, but it's not noted in your
Yep,
supplemental.
no, 33 total parking spots.
In the site plan, it says that, or it shows that, just
The
in your
30
sup.
Commissioner Brown just pointed out it may be, so if you look on the revised ponding exhibit that's right here, it says 33 parking spots. The site plan itself, as Commissioner Brown pointed out, may have differentiated between the handicap parking spots and the non-handicap parking spots. I believe that's why there may have been the 31 and the 2.
Maybe just look at your supplemental, it says 31, doesn't say in addition to having handicaps.
Okay.
But that's fine.
I will take a look. To be clear, for the record, it's 33 parking spaces.
Thank you. There's some terminology now about upper pond and a lower pond in the supplemental.
Can you point us to where, Commissioner, if you don't mind? Is that in the stormwater
Pages
management
aren't
report?
numbered here, but existing hydraulic conditions, existing drainage area. Let's see, it's,
The next major heading.
yeah. I wish you had some numbers here, page-wise.
If you just want to tell us the heading, Commissioner, we can find it quickly. We're on.
Existing hydraulic conditions is on the executive summary, I guess it's part of. Looks like.
Oh. Yeah, it's right in the beginning.
Opposite table 1-24 HR.
Yeah, okay, let me just read here.
Yep.
Just the pond, I don't know of any ponds on that land. And some of it says ponding. Somebody could clarify, are there existing ponds?
Maybe you're referencing the ponded areas, maybe?
Yeah, so, sorry, there's, and
Not saying that, it's ponds. I'm just,
the hydraulic software that we use, we create ponds for areas that actually pond with water. There's obviously not a physical pond on the property, but it's referencing where water is building up and how we.
ponding, maybe.
Yeah, ponding and what we're calling the volume areas for some of the things, yeah.
Okay. That was a little confusing
Areas.
with these upper pond and lower ponds, but ponding, I guess. Would that only be with the 100-year flood are you referring to as well, or is that could be any rain occasion?
It's a general term for all events.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Secretary Kelly?
No questions.
Okay, Commissioner?
Okay, I got a couple things. Mr. Logan, you're saying that there's no adverse impacts. I'd like to just have you on record, just verbalize why you're saying that.
You want specific reasons of why?
I don't know if it's been documented in any way other than, we believe that's our opinion. So I wanted to just understand.
Okay, so if we're looking at functions and values, if I did an analysis between the existing functions and the proposed functions and values, I would find them so similar that in the pre to post development, that I would have to say that I would conclude that because of that, there's no adverse impact. If I could point to one, a particular function or value which would have been greatly diminished by the proposal, then I would say, well, there you have an adverse impact. If you couple that with the fact that also we're doing certain mitigative practices as far as removal of invasives, et cetera, that also is factored in my opinion.
So a couple of, I guess, comments on that. One, your permanent impacts, are 220 square feet. Doesn't seem like a lot, so I can understand why in a lot of these wetland projects we work on, right? That's pretty small. But in Rocky Hill, we don't have a lot of wetlands. So 220 square feet is kind of a lot in terms of the wetlands we have and the wildlife benefits that come from the wetlands. The creation area that you're proposing to offset the permanent impacts is 101 square feet. So there's a little square footage missing there. Yes, you have some enhancement, which also can mitigate for the temporary impacts from grading. Your proposed creation is also right along the edge of the parking lot in an area of elevation that's, I was looking at, is pretty borderline to what the elevation of the wetland naturally is anyways. I think the wetland right on that area was 103 to at max 105, and it looks like you're putting it right at 105, right there.
It's not at 105.
Yeah.
We looked at that carefully, and it's at probably 104 and a little bit.
Yeah.
104 and change.
And it's right on the edge. So you're creating more edge habitat there. You're creating a wetland along your edge, which is always an area that gets impacted. It's going to be right next to a parking lot. That's where all the trash is going to collect. I don't know if what you're proposing to stabilize that slope. If there's going to be some stone or riprap or anything like that, is that going to be an actual improvement benefit to account for the the impact that's happening to the wetland?
So, first of all, and it's kind of hard to see it on this plan,
Yeah.
but I was able to zoom in and look at it more carefully and then pick up the elevation. And I said, okay, that's, in my professional opinion, the limit of where a wetland can be created, because we're pulling back those contours, obviously. There is I'm going to say probably at least a 6-foot vegetated slope above that with plantings. If you went to LL1, you'd probably see that. Let's see if we can go to LL1.
And Commissioner, while Mr. Logan is going to the appropriate sheet, we'll note that area, Mr. Bruton just reminded me, there's obviously the plantings that Mr. Logan just mentioned, but there's also stone mulch proposed in that area as well.
Right. So there is the planting. So you see there's a row of either it's bayberry and gray dogwood or both. and then there's the stone mulch above that. So, and then there's the parking lot. So there's some protection there to make sure the slope doesn't slump into the wetland or towards the wetland. And again, it'd be focus into that a little more, but I don't know that I can.
And Commissioner, with respect, I know you're looking at the plans, but just with respect to, you mentioned at the outset, which was trash to collect there, I'll remind you that we included maintenance plans and maintenance notes at the outset of our, or mentioned them at the outset of our presentation. And the applicant, of course, is entitled to a presumption that it will comply with its plan and maintaining the system appropriately, but also reminding the commission that the commission, through staff, retains enforcement authority. So we're hearing today, you know, I don't believe that ponding won't happen, or trash might collect there, or things like that. We are saying it will not happen, and if the plan is built and there are concerns, the commission has enforcement authority to ensure that that is corrected. So I just want to make that clear, because not only are we entitled to the legal presumption, taking it 10 steps down the road, the commission can intervene if something were to happen.
Right, I understand that, but we're also entitled to our questions. So, and that is a concern of hers, so.
Oh, Madam Chair, I wasn't saying otherwise. I was just answering the question.
You know, I'm sorry, George, go ahead.
No,
Mr.
okay, I think if, well, my eyes are kind of playing tricks on me, but there's a row of gray dogwoods there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's 6 feet, but yeah, it's a row, right? Well, I guess, you know, on center, they're about 3 feet to 6 feet. Okay, that makes about sense. Okay. And then, you know, the fact that the outfall is there and, you know, in the same elevation of the wetland. I mean, I know we asked you to put an out, you know, to address the drainage and the ponding, but I find it's a little, to put your creation area right next to something that you're not, I don't know. You're saying it's only going to get wet during the 100-year flood to accept the drainage, and then that's where your wetland elevation is to me a little,
Well, if I can ask Mr. Burton, because I think this is, I've been thinking about it, and I don't have the plan in front of me, but if he could tell me what the invert, because that's an inlet, right? What's the invert elevation for that?
See whose eyes are better. Hold on.
I always use my phone too.
The inlet, the new one that we created,
Yeah.
the western one, is an inlet of 103.
okay. So it is in the wetland.
Continuing the question, so it's a 103. At the center of that wetland, as the water comes down, what is that? Slightly less than 103.
Yeah, slightly less than 103 in spots, yeah, and then it climbs back up.
Yeah. Because I think that goes back to one of the questions that we heard, is we want to be sure that we're not diverting
Yeah.
into that inlet, but that we're continuing to allow the water to go to the primary inlet.
Correct,
down
and go to the-
pipe. And I think
And-
that's what's happening.
And for reference, the existing, or the originally proposed inlet for the conveyance of, you know, through the wetland, that's at 102. So that one's lower. So that's the
Okay, so that'll go
primary directive of the flow of the water through the wetland and continuing on to the main street. This is, again, just to use that term again, an overflow. Set higher, but still set at an appropriate elevation with coordination with George.
Yeah, I mean, I have, you know, worries that that's going to be a successful wetland area if your higher 100-foot drainage, you know, is accepting that at 103, when you're wetland, you're calling it wetland at 105. So, you know, there's 2-foot difference there. And I know the wetlands there that might be a little higher elevation wetlands, they're not obligate maybe, or, you know, whatever, but, you know, just, I'm just, you know, talking about the comparison between the permanent and the proposed mitigation and adverse impacts and functions and values. I still think it's a little lacking, and I do think that there could potentially be an adverse impact from this project. And I'm voicing that as a professional wetland scientist as well, as my opinion, based on this, so, and the things that I just mentioned. A couple other things.
Commissioner, if I may, if I can just ask you, Commissioner Kaplan, you've put your credentials onto the record. I'm certainly not contesting them, but you're saying that there could potentially be an adverse impact as a result of the plan. So as the applicant, because we're obviously here to discuss that, if you could put onto the record what those adverse impacts would be and explain how they arise as a result of our plan, we'd appreciate it, because that's certainly something we need to hear.
So as I mentioned, you're proposing a permanent impact of 220 square feet of wetlands and proposing a creation of 101 square feet. The area of your creation is a higher elevation than your inlet to drain the hydrology of the wetland. So I am thinking, my opinion is that there could be an adverse impact to this wetland of a loss of permanent size of this wetland, thereby the value of the wetland providing wildlife habitat and its uniqueness, which is a function and value if you look at the assessments, because there are not many wetlands of this size and providing wildlife habitat in Rocky Hill. Would be an adverse impact. So that's what I'm saying.
Thank you. And again, Matt, through you, Madam Chair, I'm not disputing the Commission's right to put on its opinions on the record, but I do have, as the applicant's counsel, the right to explain legally. With respect to wildlife habitat, unless there is habitat that contributes to the value or function of the wetland, wildlife habitat just does not matter here legally. There are the salamander case, for example. There are cases out there that explain that. And again, I say this with all due respect, Commissioner, I do have to put it on the record. I'm not hearing anything about an adverse impact to the conveyance of stormwater here, which both SLR, town staff, and the applicant believed was the primary value and function of the wetland. With that, we can agree to disagree, of course, but I appreciate you putting that on the record, and we're continuing to be here to answer questions.
I understand that, all wetlands are valuable to some extent, even square foot. We understand that we always have to look at the impacts. But something that you mentioned, that you're saying that, Rocky Hill doesn't have wetlands, I beg to differ. There are large portions of wetlands. I mean, you have the Connecticut River and its floodplains. You have all the riparian areas that go there. You have significant wetlands in here that are much, much more valuable and functioning than this little thing right here, which, by the way, and I made a comment earlier, one of the reasons why, in my view, these potential impacts are magnified is because we're dealing with a 10-scale plan. Think about it, right? So everything kind of gets bigger, and it looks bigger, but it ain't. This is really a postage stamp wetland.
Right, and I'm just, just to go on with this, I a little bit, I went back to SLR's, report, and they say, quote, additionally, despite the wetland's relatively small size, the wetland is one of the larger wooded areas in this portion of Rocky Hill, contributing to the site's limited but potentially locally significant potential for wildlife habitat. So they were a peer review that was brought on, and I agree with their opinion on that.
So they're really talking about a upland wooded area there that's surrounded by development. And yes, I mean, it's within an urban area. It's significant to have this wood lot, obviously. But here we have to also concentrate on the wetlands and not just, it's a part of an upland.
They say wooded, they say wetland is one of.
Yeah, but the wetland that we have on our site is bordered on the south by significant commercial development. And there's a major transportation corridor there that we all know the ecological effects of transportation corridors to wetlands. So is there a little area in the middle of this 10-acre lot or whatever it is that's, attracts wildlife and it has good value? Yes, but that's way off our property. So we have to concentrate on what we have here. And its juxtaposition to all this development affects its ecological integrity.
Right. But if I could, excuse me, Commissioner, we've had, in regards to wildlife, we've had members of the public testify at previous public hearings where they have seen wildlife in their backyards that are abutting this site. You know, a deer is not going to know a property boundary. Say, oh, well, I can't go over there. You know, the deer's not going to know. So any wetland is going to attract wildlife. To say that we don't have wildlife in that area, I have to disagree with you because of the fact that we have had members of the public abutting this site say that they have seen wildlife in their backyard in the wetlands. Granted, okay, yes, that wetland might not be on your site, but it is still the same wetland. Okay, and to say, yes, we do have wetlands in this town. Yes, we do. All right, and we fight as a commission very hard to protect those wetlands. Okay, I just want to put out there, that is our major concern by every single person on this board, that we are here to protect the wetlands.
Madam Chair, just to be clear, we're not contesting, I have the photos of the deer that were submitted into the record. They're part of the record. We're not contesting that deer exist, have been seen off-site to the property. What I'm saying is that this is the Open Space and Conservation Commission, not the Wildlife Commission, and the only, if I may, the only intersection between this commission's jurisdiction and wildlife is if the wildlife itself contributes to the value or function. The flora and the fauna contribute to the value and function of the wetland. The deer don't do that here, and we have no evidence in the record to indicate that. That's all I was saying. I'm not contesting there's deer. I'm just saying, for purposes of this commission, it just doesn't matter.
Right, but the functions and values of a wetland is to provide wildlife habitat. Whether there's a specific wildlife that's specifically using this one, I haven't researched it to see, but wetlands in general, provide, habitat for various types of, and very specific types of species. But as you mentioned, we can't necessarily use a salamander as a reason. But we could also say that the wetland, as SLR states, provides sediment and or nutrient retention. Yes, the wetland will still provide that function, but my point is you're going to have a loss of permanent wetland size, thereby providing less of the existing function that was there, because you're reducing the size, and what you're proposing to replace it may not be the highest value and functions to replace that, because it's in a higher elevation, is kind of what I'm saying. I think that's all I have. I think I'm done now.
Okay, Commissioners.
All right. Mr. Bruton, could you please explain your storage chambers and how they're interconnected? I read your notes, and you're calling out rows and number of chambers, and I'm assuming those are the inner smaller rectangles, and then your pipe is connecting to the outer rectangle, and then your outer rectangles are connecting to the other systems. I'm just wondering how that's all interconnected.
1 second, Mr. Commissioner. I just want to make sure I give you the exact. So we have, you're correct in terms of the orientation. So it's a single storm trap system. So it's a precast concrete system. So the depiction of it here with the inner chambers is the actual chambers with the kind of outside band as like a collar around it. So they're all interconnected and touching with the openings between them. We would obviously get an actual shop drawing from Storm Trap that could be reviewed by town staff to show how, the individual details of this orientation, but the water freely flows from, I'd say, the rectangle to the west, to the smaller rectangle to the corner of the building towards the larger square in the parking lot there. But yeah, they all be interconnected and stacked in kind of this Tetris formation.
So what is in that outer rectangle then?
It's how Storm Trap displays the system. It's all concrete, but they show it as a collar with the actual chambers as those squares.
Okay, so then that corner that is off of the pavement heading to the southwest, is that going to be exposed or is that still going to be covered? You're saying your top of your system is 104.5 and that corner is there or below?
Yeah, we could double check that to make sure that obviously the goal is not to expose any system to have the appropriate cover over it.
Okay, thank you. And then on both of your head walls, I'm still concerned about the grading at those. If I'm reading correctly, the invert of your pipe is at 103. Your 104 contour is right on top of that, but then the 105 contour is set back like 5 or 6 feet, and you have a 2-foot pipe. So that means the top foot of your pipe is sticking out of the ground?
Yeah, we can double check that one more time, Mr. Commissioner, to make sure that it's obviously flush with grade of that slope.
Right, but then that means that if you're going to cover your pipe, that means you have to pull your grading forward?
Let's see, double check here. Hold on one second.
Commissioner, if we can just have just one moment.
Mm-hmm.
Short answer, Mr. Commissioner, was yes. We would adjust the location of that so it'd be flush and not jutting above the landscape surface in both locations.
So you're pulling your head walls closer to your chambers, or you're going to be pulling your grading out to cover your pipe?
I'd pull the grading closer. I wouldn't want to relocate the location of the head walls.
All right, you're tight to the wetlands. Is that going to impact your quantities of impacts?
My goal would be not to
Well,
move
I know
that
it'd be your
location.
goal.
Yeah,
That'd be my goal too.
yeah. Obviously, we'd fix it on the back end between the wing walls and the edge of the pavement, not push the wing walls deeper into the wetlands or affect any of the existing wetland areas.
Okay. All right, and then the last question, at the last meeting, we'd asked to see the alternates, and I don't want to paraphrase for you, so I'll just ask the question. You did not submit the alternates because?
Apologies, Commissioner. We did not submit the alternates. We did put them verbally onto the record about the different configurations. We did not have these level drawings with the plans, but we discussed the different configurations. I was not there, so I'll ask Mr. Bruton to discuss the different configurations that we had.
Well,
discussed with the staff.
verbal doesn't, I'm a visual person, so that's why, I said even if there were sketches, that would be appropriate. So, okay. Thank you, that's all I have right now.
Okay, any other questions from any of the other commissioners? Nope. Okay, do we have any questions from the public? Nope. Rob?
Oh, wow. This is going to get
Yeah,
dry.
she's getting her water.
This is going to be a long one.
Please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Rhonda Janae. I live at 18 Elm Street. And before I start, I'd like to submit a pictorial journal of the consistent water flow through this property starting on December 5th. This may help clear up any questions about the amount of water that flows through there and the fact that it never stops flowing.
Do we have enough? Is this just one copy?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, can we go ahead, keep it so we can put it into the record?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was going to alter my talk a little bit, but I think I'm just going to read it as I wrote it because my head's spinning with everything that's being said tonight. So I've been paying close attention to both the planning and zoning as well as these hearings. Obviously, I have a vested interest. I'm the property owner of the property to the west of the Laganas property located at 2369 Main Street. I think that's important to say on record because I haven't heard it mentioned at any of these hearings. Vessel does not own this property. The Laganas have owned it for decades. If these permits are issued, then Vessel will purchase the property. If they are not issued, they walk away, and the Laganas will retain the property. I wanted to clarify that for anyone that may be following these proceedings and be unclear on who actually owns the property. I'd like to start with snow removal. When it snows, our schools get canceled, sometimes work gets canceled, businesses close early or don't open at all. A truck will likely not be able to put any snow in the storage area to the west. It will only have a small portion of the north storage for snow. If the trucks get enough speed to plow that snow onto the storage area, it is highly unlikely that there will not be spillage added to the neighboring properties. If the snow needs to be taken off-site, it's not going to be possible for a snowplow to fit in there with a dump truck and a bucket loader to maneuver around the 33 cars in the parking lot. This is just not realistic. I heard Mr. Levy, through Attorney Gomes, confirm that they will not use any chemicals for de-icing. Salt, of course, constitutes a chemical, as it is sodium and chloride, which we wouldn't want to contaminate the wetlands or discharge water in any way. Mr. Burton has testified that the parking lot is sloped down toward the drain in the southeast portion of the parking lot, just to the inside of the parking lot entrance. I believe this poses a safety risk for anyone walking through the parking lot, as well as cars sliding through the parking lot, because, as we know in New England, things that are melting during the day tend to refreeze at night, creating a hazardous situation without anything but sand to address this situation. It also poses risks to cars pulling in as well as cars trying to pull out into traffic or stopping at the stop sign before exiting onto the highway. Next, about the trees. I know the original plan called for removal of all the trees, and that at our last wetlands meeting, when the trees were discussed, they suddenly said that they were going to keep some of the trees, but I'm unclear on who's going to determine what trees stay and go. I believe Mr. Logan said only saplings and seedlings will be removed. No mature Norway maple trees, which provide ecological services such as shading, food sources, and socialization, shall be retained. I feel uncomfortable having Mr. Logan make that distinction, considering the fact that he is in disagreement with all the other experts on something as simple as intermittent watercourse, wetlands, and a stream. At the most recent Planning and Zoning meeting, Mr. Burton stated that we don't want to flood out a section of wetlands that's not used to the amount of water. Our goal is to continue the flow of the neighborhood above us. Using the 2004 Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual, we are required to mitigate the peak flows, so we tried to match that or slightly decrease that. That was from the October 19th meeting. Yet on December 14th, at the wetlands meeting, Matt stated from the south, we are allowing it to continue to flow onto our site. To the west, this water flows from the neighborhood to us. Our goal is to continue to let it flow. These are wooded, non-parking lot, non-house, likely wetlands or watercourses, anything of undevelopable area that you guys are going to be protecting anyways, regardless. It's not our property. It's where water should be. It's in the wetlands areas. So again, it's not our water. It's the water from the neighbors. It's where water should be. It's in these woods, in these wetlands areas. It's actually water from an act of God, if you will. It doesn't belong to me or any of our neighbors. It's an act, just like the flowing through our properties through the Laganas property, under the highway, and continuing on to the Connecticut River. It seems almost alarming that two different committees are being told two different things. Thankfully, there is video documentation of all these proceedings so that clarification and confirmation of these things are readily available. The 2004 Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual says, natural wetlands should never be used either temporarily or permanently as a stormwater pond or wetland. I believe the 100-year storm would constitute temporary. The manual also states to calculate the required groundwater recharge to maintain pre-development annual groundwater recharge on site. Mr. Burton said on several occasions that there will be no groundwater recharge on this site. It talks about a sensitive watercourse or tributary watercourse or wetlands, since the Connecticut River is downhill 2 or 3 blocks. I'm not sure if this would fall into that category, but if it does, it says that it warrants a high degree of protection. The manual discusses health and safety risks for the underwater system proposed, as they often become a breeding grounds for mosquitoes, which, as we know, carry infectious diseases, such as malaria, West Nile, and Zika viruses, to name a few. The manual advises that all entry points should be sealed, as mosquitoes can enter openings as small as 1/16 of an inch to access and lay eggs. Mr. Levy testified to Planning and Zoning that the wetlands shrank, when I believe it was said that it actually shifted off-site, which may change the 100-foot review area. The 2004 manual also discusses some impacts that urban development has on wetlands. Some of these impacts are changes in hydrology and hydrogeology, increased nutrient and contaminant loads, compaction and destruction of wetland soil, changes in wetland vegetation, changes in loss of habitat, permanent loss of wetlands. It goes on to say land disturbances in proximity to wetlands, watercourses, steep slopes, and other sensitive resource areas should be avoided or minimized. 79.6% impervious is a massive number. I know this committee was originally told that it was 72%, which is still very high. But according to the testimony of Mr. Levy to the Planning and Zoning Committee, it's up to 79.6%. They say the book says that the successful application of these disturbances is more difficult and less practical on small lots in heavily developed areas. I'm not saying this is a bad concept, but this half acre of land, which is an important part of a wetland and an intermittent stream, is an extremely inappropriate location. The severe destruction of this wetlands, as well as neighboring wetlands, far outweighs any benefit of 9 apartments. There are some coming in across the street. We must retain this wetlands and its benefits. There's also a concern about these underground water systems that freeze in the wintertime. Now, my concern is, since there's not going to be any pump or any backup, how do we prevent this from freezing? And what do we do if it does freeze, especially since we can't put any chemicals into it? And you know, there was talk about trash, you know, maybe falling to the wayside and stuff, and I know that they had said that, you know, we can't make these presumptions, but a maintenance worker who's maintaining this property 10 hours a week, they are on site, is a concern that trash could build up and we just wouldn't see it until those 10 hours. And also, I'm questioning, someone said that the water system can permit backflow for the water to come back out of the system as well as going into the system. And the trees, I think that losing those trees is extremely detrimental. Those trees help clean our air, and they provide a cleaner environment for us. Now, in this board had asked me about the water flow in October, and I couldn't honestly answer that question because there were trees, there were leaves on the trees, and there was not a steady flow of water. But as soon as those leaves fell off the trees, now we have a steady stream that has not stopped flowing since. And I would imagine it's going to continue to flow until the leaves come back on the trees in mid-spring. So that answers the question that was asked of me a few months ago. I thank you for your time.
Hey, anybody else from the public?
My name is Luciano Pastrito. I live on 26 Elm Street. I'm just wondering, with the proposal of this building, on the civil standpoint,
Can you please make sure you speak into the microphone, please?
from a civil standpoint, A, where is the transformer going for the utilities? And B, when this proposed drainage is going to get put in and the extension of the DOT pipe put up, what type of equipment is going to be used, and how are you going to prevent contamination into the current wetlands with your machinery and everything? And when I suppose you're putting in footings or pylons to support the building, what are you going to do with the high water table level? Where are you going to pump that out to? Because you can't pump it into the town city stormwater or the wetlands. And will there be some type of environmental agency hired to maintain that they don't contaminate the wetlands? And my last thing is, from the legal standpoint that was explained, and if it could be clarified, it sounded like if there is no alternative solution, then the commission can't do anything about it, which makes no sense to me. That's all.
Thank you. Anybody else from public? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Andrea Gomes, counsel for the applicant. I'll make this quick because I do think we addressed a lot of the points that were made by the two members of the public who spoke. With respect to snow removal, again, I'd point the commission to the condition of approval that we've put into the packet. You know, I will look to my team to come and correct me if I'm wrong. We're not disputing that it's a wetland. We're not disputing that water may flow through Ms. Genet's property or anything like that. The point is that we're maintaining site hydrology and we're not impacting the flow of water through our wetland, therefore not impacting the value and function of the wetland. With respect to Mr. Lustrito, I believe's comment or request for clarification on feasible and prudent alternatives, the law is that if the commission finds and if the applicant proves that there will be no adverse impact to the wetland, then the feasible and prudent requirement has been satisfied, right? Because feasible and prudent analysis is showing that there's another plan that has less impact. If you find no impact in the first place, then there's no requirement for a feasible and prudent alternative. And our position is that we've put ample evidence into the record that there are no quantifiable, specific adverse impacts to the value and function of the wetland. Madam Chair, that is it for me, but I will ask Mr. Bruton to just come up and answer Mr. Lustrito's questions. I believe he had asked, where's the transformer for the utilities and how we're going to protect the wetland during construction. And then I'll have Mr. Bruton remind the commission about DOT review as well.
Yep. So in terms of the installation of the stormwater management system, obviously we would need heavy machinery, excavators to provide that, to dig the trenches as necessary for the installation of the system. But the goal of this is to stake out the wetland boundaries, that limit of disturbance that are shown on this plans, to make sure we're staying within the area that we're proposing to disturb. So that would give the contractor in the field the guidance to where he can dig and move and place his equipment. So that's item number one. In terms of transformer, yeah, pole mounted or and everything. All gear would be internal to supply the building, and then in terms of the revisions to grading around those wing wells, obviously we can make that change. That would have no impact on the stormwater management report about the overall hydrology or additional impacts to the wetlands.
If I could, Mr. Bruin, real quick.
Sorry, well, one more. Andrew's reminded me. DOT also has to review this, right? Just as a reminder for the encroachment permit that deals with the driveway, the curb cuts, and also the drainage as well, because they are accepting the water from us and everybody above us. So reminder that is an ongoing process after this local process.
Okay. Just refresh my memory again. How are you planning on protecting the wetlands during your excavation?
So it's depicted on our erosion and sedimentation control plan. So we have a variety of items on the site as it's cleared, right? So we have silt fence, silt sacks, construction entrances, soil stockpile areas, erosion control blankets. All those combination of devices will be used by a contractor until the site is stabilized. And by stabilized, I mean buildings up, pavements in, landscaping is in, and stabilized. These devices will obviously be moved around as different phases of construction happen, but those are the devices that would be employed by the contractor to protect the wetlands, the abutters, the streets, everything.
Madam Chair, can I ask a follow-up? And reiterate one of your questions. I think you asked about dewatering.
Oh.
Yeah,
Yep.
could you answer that?
Yep. So if high groundwater is encountered during an excavation, if a trench is opened, and a couple ways that contractors deal with that is either wait it out, wait till there's a drier period in a week or a month to do that work, or they would pump it out so they can continue to construct or place what they need to. Typically, when they have to do that, what we have them do is we have them set up a temporary sediment basin, dirt bag, something like that, so that it's discharged and captured, and all that sediment is settled before the water then continues to flow off-site. So that's a kind of a means and methods depending on how it shakes out, what time of year they're constructing, and if groundwater is encountered.
Likely Commissioner Kaplan's follow-up, would that impact the hydrology of the wetland or the value and function of the wetland?
No.
Yeah. No, that's pretty standard practice. I just wanted to hear you say that.
Thanks.
The next question.
Softballs, Commissioner.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask one more, hopefully easy question. Are you planning to have some sort of monitor during construction, environmental consultant or something to just do inspections?
So as part of the, it's not on one of these sheets that are on the presentation, but EC2, I believe it is, or maybe EC3, there's operation and maintenance schedule for the contractor to follow, and it names out the applicant to delineate a responsible person to not only maintain these erosion control devices, but at a periodic basis to make sure that, prior to big storms, that everything's set, and after storms, things are corrected and adjusted and as necessary. So it's supposed to be a kind of a living document as construction progresses.
Okay.
And Commissioner, we also have Mr. Logan's document that he submitted into the record at the last meeting regarding his review and ongoing monitoring of the maintenance, the removal of the invasives. And the treatment of the invasives going forward. So we have that as well from the landscaping side of things, I guess you would call it.
The planting monitoring to make sure it's successful for the year that you have your warranty? Okay.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
It was, I believe, a narrative document that we attached to our December submission.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Sure.
just one question. They submitted these photos for the record. I'm sure you would like copies.
Yes, please.
Scanned or copied and mailed to you?
Scanned is fine. If I may, just take one
Sure.
quick moment to look at them before we close the hearing.
Sure.
Because it's our last chance.
Sure. Are there any other questions from any of the other commissioners?
Are we going to close, just through the chair, are we going to close the
Yeah,
public
do you
hearing
have
and
any other further?
discussion?
Right, do you have any other further questions
No.
for the applicant? Okay.
One more public question. You said,
Can you please step up?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I just going to take one moment to review
That's
the
fine.
I just don't want the commission to close the hearing.
No, that's fine. We'll wait for you.
He's, what's the engineer's name? Matt. Matt has stated that all the electrical is going to be inside and it'll be a pole-mounted transformer. An apartment building, I'm also an electrician, consider me master after 22 years. I don't think anybody's a master of anything after 22 years, which the majority of the people here have the experience of. A building of this size, and I believe Mr. Vessler said that it was going to be all electric, cannot sustain one pole mount transformer. You would need a pad mount transformer, probably of 2,000 amps or more. That is not on the site. Utilities underground is not there, which would have, if it's under drainage, wouldn't be allowed. Metering, I believe you would need 32 meter cans, one for the owner, and 31 for the apartment, or 31 apartment buildings, and the water meters also. So
Right.
none of this is on the site plan,
Right. Unfortunately, that's out of our purview,
but I
but
understand.
that would have to go up with P&Z.
But wouldn't that mess with the hydraulic system to where it's going? That's why I'm asking.
Mr. Chairman, obviously, I'm not an electrician,
Right.
but as part of the process, we do coordinate, in the future with the utility companies of where they want things placed. If we did need a transformer, we would obviously place it outside of the wetland area in an appropriate location and around the existing stormwater management system. But that's, again, way further down the
But
process.
there would be places outside of the wetland area.
Absolutely.
Closer to the building or anywhere that would
The-
not affect the hydrology of the wetlands.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, we had an opportunity, thank you, to look through the photos that
Sure.
were submitted into the record by the public.
Okay.
It doesn't alter any of our conclusions or the statements that we made tonight. We'll just note that we can't tell where these photos were taken on our property or on Ms. Chenet's property, so it's difficult to evaluate exactly where the water is supposedly flowing from. So I'll just note that for the record, because they are up-close photos. But again, doesn't change any of our conclusions, and I've just confirmed that with Mr. Logan.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? Can I get a motion to close the public hearing, please?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing for Vessel RE Holdings LLC.
Okay,
I'll second it.
second. Okay, discussion?
You want to start here?
Go ahead. Leslie, do you have any?
No, I do not have any discussion.
Okay, so I'll just
Well,
kind
wait, hold on. Let's close the public hearing, and then once we get to the permitting, then we'll get into that. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Okay. Thank you. The public hearing has
Can I
been,
ask a clarifying question? She's not here, am I voting?
yes, I'm sorry, yes. Commissioner Kaplan will be voting in place of Commissioner O'Connor, who is not present tonight. Thank you. I meant to say that. Thank you. Okay, so that is passed. The public hearing has been closed. Let's move on to applications for permit. A, Vessel Real Estate Holdings. Could I actually have a motion, please?
Are we going to do some discussion through the chair? Or we do that, or no? It's no discussion?
Next month.
Yeah, next month. Oh,
Okay.
let's go ahead and table.
May I
Oh,
read?
we're going to table it? Okay.
I'm sorry?
She's
What?
going to table.
What, Ted?
So we just close the hearing and then next,
Yeah, let's
Discuss.
go ahead,
Okay.
table till, so can we get a motion
to continue?
to table this till next
To
month?
continue it.
Continue it till next month?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we
Thank you.
table the application until next month.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion?
Madam Chair, are we
Yes.
allowed? I thought this was the end.
No, this is the end for the public hearing. We have 30 days from the end of the public hearing to vote on it,
Okay.
which will bring it to the February 8th meeting.
Should, and through the chair, should we do the discussion now? or
No,
should we
let's do
it
the
before
discussion
vote?
before the vote,
Probably best.
okay?
Okay.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We're going to go ahead and table this to the February 8th meeting. Thank you. Okay, B, Metropolitan District Commission proposed construction of a new Headworks building and a new electrical building within the 100-year floodplain located at 80 Gulfbrook Lane. Can the applicants please step forward?
Good evening.
Hi. good
Hi,
evening.
Julie Bjorkman with JKB Consulting. I'm a consultant for the Metropolitan District, and we have Alan Pelletier from the Metropolitan District Commission and Jessica Ping from Arcadis, who are the design engineers. I believe we did our presentation last time, and so we were just here to mainly run through it and answer any questions, if you guys have any additional questions.
Okay, first before we start, Steve, did we hear anything from Weathersfield? Any opposition?
No, they were notified,
Yep.
and I think you have a copy in your packet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No correspondence on this.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, can we get a motion, please, for application for permit B?
Can I ask a
Go ahead.
question? Did anything change on the plan since your last permit?
No, nothing has changed. It's all the same. It's just basically the two buildings that are being constructed within the floodplain at the plant.
Okay.
Nothing has changed.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to approve the Metropolitan District Commission proposed construction of a new Headworks building and a new electrical building within the 100-year floodplain located at 80 Gulfbrook Lane.
okay, second?
Second.
You can let him, it's fine.
Discussion? Discussion, none? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No, congratulations, you're all set, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that one was.
I like that one.
Thank you.
Here we go.
Okay, last one, application for permit, Town of Rocky Hill, care of Raymond Carpentino, Town Manager. Proposed remediation of contaminated soil and redevelopment into open space with barn pad site, gravel driveway and gravel parking lot located at 374 New Britain Avenue, former Straska's Farm. And Secretary Kelly has informed me she is recusing herself from this because of
I'm
the fact.
involved in the development.
Yes, she's heavily involved in the development. And with that being said, Commissioner Kurz will be voting in her place. Okay, thank you. Okay,
Hang on.
yep.
You know how to go back here? There we go. Hi, John Yike from Zuvik. I'm an environmental professional with Zuvik. I'm also here with Dan Bill. He's a civil engineer, also from Zuvik. We're working for the town on this project. The former Straska Farm property at 374 New Britain Avenue is proposed for environmental remediation and reuse into primarily open space. The property has a colorful history, which most, if not all of you, probably know already, so I'm not going to go into the details. I'll just leave it as the property looks so much better now than what it looked like a couple years ago, since all the junk has been removed, along with the remaining structures. So granted, I'm doing this correctly. Uh-oh. All right, so on this sheet, I just want to touch on the wetlands mapping and E&S controls. The remediation reuse will follow on some other sheets. The proposed work on this permit is just to the northwestern corner of the property. That's what's shown here. The remainder of the property, approximately 70 acres or so, is currently being farmed or is wooded. The wetlands are mapped on the eastern and southern portions of this portion of the sites. Just looking at the figure here, if you start on the right side of the figure, there's a line going horizontally across the page to the west. That is the wetlands mapped boundary. It takes a hard turn, south, actually to the southeast. It continues around down to, I don't know if you can tell here, there's a little water course. It's a little brook that flows from basically east to west across the property. So the wetlands follow that stream to the west,
down toward the southwestern corner of the site where the wetlands pop up a little away from the stream, on this lower southwestern portion of the site. Hopefully I explained that so you guys can follow it. That's where the wetlands boundary is as mapped by Jim McManus was out there mapping these, I believe, in October. So the, the 100-foot upland review area, that is the more bold line, which is essentially to the north of the mapped wetlands. It's important to note that there's no proposed work in the wetlands area, and there's only a small amount proposed within the upland review area. The small amount's in the center of the figure here, and you'll see in the next sheet where we're just doing some covering of some arsenic impacted soil in that area. Other than that, everything's outside, the upland review area also that's being proposed. Let's see the next page here. This will be the fourth sheet, RP3. So this is the remediation that's proposed. There are 7 areas. They're small, little rectangular or square areas throughout like the center portion of the site. They're small. They're like, we're looking at 4 to 12 cubic yards of material being removed. The areas are impacted by either petroleum or lead or pesticides. The largest area is in the north central portion of the site around where the farmhouse used to be, and that's about 300 cubic yards of material that's going to be removed, disposed off-site. So basically it's going to be dug out. The material is either going to be stockpiled temporarily. There are some stockpiles down here on the west central portion of the sites, and that soil will then be disposed of off-site properly. The areas will eventually also be backfilled too after the excavation work is completed. Yep, there's a stock, I think I just said that, there's going to be a stockpile area of contaminated soil if the contractor chooses to stockpile, like I said, in that west central portion of the site there. Again, that's not in the wetlands, it's outside the upland review area. The arsenic cover area is the large, let's say, snail-shaped kind of blob in the middle of the map here. This area is going to be covered with 1 foot of clean fill. This area may also receive some material removed during the site regrading to support the proposed site reuse, which you'll see on the next sheet. So basically that area is just going to get 1 foot of clean fill to cover it. That's nice. A small portion of this cover area is within the upland review area, the 100-foot. None of it's in the wetlands. So you can kind of see the central portion of the site here. There's like a double hatch little feature there that shows where, we're going to be doing some work within the upland review area. All right, so Dan's going to cover the next sheet, page 5, which is the proposed reuse of the site. Before he gets to that, I just want to note that the proposed reuse, it's going to be a barn pad site, a gravel drive, a gravel parking lot, and the grading. This was developed based upon an architectural concept that was run through the Land Acquisition and Farmland Preservation Committee, and it was also reviewed by town staff. So I just wanted to point that out. So.
Good evening. I'm Dan Vill, a professional engineer with Zuvik. I'm going to share the civil plan here to explain some of the civil improvements. There are no civil improvements being made within the upland review area. Let me see if I can. Oops. Come on. This is. Come on. Oh, this is rough. All right, some of the improvements you'll see here are a gravel driveway of varied widths. We've pulled the driveway away from the intersection to improve some traffic flow. The major grading work is to accommodate the parking up here. We have incorporated some swales and gravel ditches on the side of the road to reduce runoff velocity. There's a few landscaped areas that will accept some of the runoff from the site and reduce the runoff velocities. So we don't see, there's the design assumes no increase in the impervious area, based on, there's some existing buildings that are basically going to be replaced in the future. Being that all these improvements are outside the upland review area, I'm not sure if the commission has any questions about the civil improvements or how much detail you want me to get into. Steve?
No.
Yeah.
No, as long as they're outside of the upland review area, that's fine. We're good, thank you.
You've got silt fence and things protecting
Yeah.
everything.
Just,
so-
Yeah, is that the plan, silt fence?
Yeah. Here, I can go back to
So
the
no, you
ENS plan.
can't.
All right,
there's
so
Sedimentation, erosion.
yeah, so the silt fence is this line here with the hatch across it, and it dips into the upland review area in a small portion, which is to allow for the cover of the arsenic area, as John described. But the final grading in this area is very similar to. There's a maximum of, or an average of 12 inches of fill that goes over the arsenic area. So. The silt fence doesn't enter the wetlands area itself, and there's no construction beyond that grading.
Through the chair, can I just ask a quick
ahead.
question? Do you, over here, do you have some sort of plan if, say, there's a large rainstorm event, is somebody going to come out and inspect the sanitation erosion controls, or?
Yeah, so in our erosion contingency plan is here. There's discussion that that the contractor must restore all his erosion and sedimentation control measures, and the inspection will be promptly performed. Yep.
Like after large rainstorm events, they'll go check everything? Okay, good.
Can you go back to the snail map for a second?
Happy to. Happy to.
Thanks.
Can you,
There you go. All right, so everything here is, so the arsenic's getting capped and the rest is all being just removed?
Yeah, the other, no.
Oh, to give you guys background, everybody else in the committee knows all about soils and everything. My last job was at a manufacturing company with a state-certified environmental test lab. So I haven't talked hazardous waste in 5 years.
Okay.
So
So these, now I actually have a cursor, hopefully you guys can see it. I found the cursor. All right, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the last area is up here around where the house used to be. Those are the 7 areas we're going to be digging out the soil, and it'll be going off-site for disposal.
Okay.
Was that your question?
Yeah, that's my question. I just want, and the arsenic, you're just, the future plan on top of, you're capping it, and then it's just grass or something that's going to grow over it, or?
Yeah, whatever, I mean, this is being preserved as open space, so that there is another, there is a concept out there that we haven't gotten into the whole, what the final, the planting's going to be, but it is in the architectural concept of, there's going to be some community gardens out here and places, and then there's going to be some other, some wild grass, stuff like that. I don't remember exactly.
What's that?
Can I ask a follow-up to that statement?
Sure,
It was
go
going
for
to
it.
be one of my questions. So obviously, you're only putting 1 foot of fill on here. Is there going to be some sort of way that we're going to put a limited use to this area so that we don't put the community gardens in this area? Or
Yeah, the community garden.
the area where the kids are going to be playing? Yeah, so that's my question.
Well, that's the reason to put the 1 foot of fill on there, to make sure it's a cap to make sure that no one's going to go through that and is going to be exposed to it. So, yeah, the community gardens are actually down here on this southeast corner of the property over here.
Just wanted to make sure.
Downhill,
I hear you.
downhill where water will flow from there.
Well, that's the other.
So, yes, it's going to get capped. There's going to be, it'll be properly restored, to prevent erosion, so.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for letting me relive the past.
I have a
We're
question.
going to be collecting confirmatory samples once we dig out the areas, so sending them to a lab to make sure that we've dug out all the soils we need to for the other areas.
That was my question. How deep are you digging?
Oh, we're
When you
actually only
remove-
going to 2 feet. These are all shallow releases, surface releases, so we're only digging to 2 feet. So
Even the
pretty-
arsenic?
The arsenic's going to stay in place. We're covering it.
Right, you're just covering it, right?
Yeah, the arsenic,
Could be natural.
I've looked at the arsenic long and hard, and very long and hard, and I've come to the conclusion that I think it is naturally occurring out there.
Yeah.
So it is actually higher concentrations in the deeper soils, closer to the bedrock, as opposed to the surface. So we've collected a lot of soils for arsenic out there, samples for arsenic, just to look at this. And that's, in this area that's being capped is where the highest concentrations near the surface, so.
Okay. I have more, but I think he was next, or
I'm all set.
you're all set.
I'm done too.
Okay. I, just from recently going to a talk and just kind of being in the field, and trying to understand the whole soils in Connecticut, as I understand, it's very confusing. I don't know if there's a place to take the soils right now in Connecticut. Are they going to have to be shipped out of state? Is that the plan? I mean, I know you said, the standard language is appropriate off-site, but I'm just curious.
The one facility in Connecticut that may be in Plainville, yeah, my understanding that it's still broken.
Yeah.
I did get soils from another sites to go through them, and they did go to a landfill in Connecticut that isn't used that often. So, but yeah, right now I don't know exactly where they're going to go. It'll really be put on the contractor. So there is a pretty good chance that it won't stay in Connecticut, and a lot of soils don't stay in Connecticut. They go to other places. So
Yeah.
Massachusetts or
Massachusetts too, like
yeah.
the Dudley facility, I think, or maybe, I don't know. There's a couple.
Yep.
I know a lot more about the regulations in the MCP in Massachusetts than I do in Connecticut. To access to do this work, to bring in the fill, the machines, are you going to build the gravel road first, or is it just use existing ground conditions, existing trail, ground paths and things like that out there?
We do have a temporary construction entrance over here. It's the existing entrance already. So, but we're going to put a little, it's going to be anti-tracking pad. I'm not the civil engineer. But yeah, that's going to be the anti-tracking pad, and then they're going to use existing roads on the site, yes. There's several that traverse the site and go here and there.
You answered about the sediment controls. I asked if there's going to be a limit to the use, one clean fill, gravel drive. Okay, and you did say that there is a potential that some of the suitable soil may be used as the cap, but not any that are specifically in the contaminated locations, right?
Well, there's going to be some regrading out here. There's going to be some areas where the grade's going to be cut.
Yeah.
There's going to be some areas where it's going to be filled. So that'll be kind of dispersed,
Okay.
hopefully throughout the cover area. But we still need to have at least a foot of clean fill over the cover area.
Okay, that makes
So-
sense. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
The area you're filling within the upland review area, you have a single layer of silt fence around this grading?
That is correct.
As you get tighter to the brook, would you consider either doubling up that silt fence or backing it up with hay bales? Just to protect the brook? I don't think we have to do the whole 100-foot upland review area. I'll start at 25 feet.
Or waddle.
Or wattle, or whatever's deemed necessary by staff, but at least to double up so we get some protection on that brook.
No question.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe the larger wattles, if you use the wattles, yeah.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, I had a similar question, I think, because I was going to ask if the water flows down to the wetlands, what are you going to do to make extra secure that? And I think he asked it, right? I think you asked it in a different way, so.
Yeah, the silt fence is intended to retain all the sediment that would flow across the site. The request for an extra layer of silt fence in the area closest to the wetlands is suitable, and we'll comply with that. I can even show that on the plans in the future. We have called for in the plans the planting of the fill area promptly after it's placed. So after the soil is placed, we would establish turf to retain that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have one more. How long is this going to take, and what month do you plan on starting?
As of when it's going to start, well, once we get through the permitting process here with the town, plus the job needs to be bid out through the town. So we were hoping to do late winter, but I think at this point, I haven't really done the math, but it's probably going to be springtime by this point. And the amount of time, the remediation shouldn't take too long. We're going to be waiting for some things along the way, but I would say 3 to 4 weeks, something like that for the remediation. Building of the other structures, I don't know. What do you think?
Grading of the roads. Grading of the roads and the parking areas, a few weeks.
I was just concerned about the removal of the contaminated areas and the capping. That was my concern. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Sure.
if I may. Once they get approval from here, then it goes to planning and zoning. So planning and zoning, they're not on the next agenda. They'll be on the February agenda, so they have to apply because, we're figuring this would be tabled. And then if they get all the approvals, then it's a matter of putting together the plans and specs. And then with that, it's usually, because there's grant money involved, they have specifics on how long these things have to be advertised and reviewed and all that. So it's probably a couple months after that before we get any results. So let's say they can advertise in March, sometime early March. By the time it comes back, it's reviewed by all the pertinent people. It's probably end of April.
Okay, thank you.
Before we
So
can
we
get
could
rolling.
say summertime.
Hopefully sooner, but let's be optimistic. Say May 1.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Madam Chairwoman, I'll make a motion to table the application for permit for the town of Rocky Hill. Care Ray Carpentino, Town Manager, proposed remediation of contaminated soil and redevelopment open space with barn pad site, gravel driveway and gravel parking lot located at 374 New Britain Avenue, formerly Straska's Farm.
Second?
Second.
Who's second?
Sorry.
Quick enough, she actually gets.
Leslie had it.
We were excited so we could actually
Liz.
vote.
Discussion?
Something.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nope. We'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We'll wait for Secretary Kelly to rejoin us. Okay, yeah. Can I get a motion? Can I get a motion to approve the action taken in the minutes from December 14th meeting?
Motion to approve the actions taken in the December meeting.
Second.
Second. Oh, I can't vote
You
this
can't.
time. Sandy's
Oh, you can't vote, that's right.
sorry. We need to be serious. We're on
Sorry.
camera.
Okay, discussion. None?
Didn't see any errors, right?
Okay,
It's going to be
approved?
Santa Kelly.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, it's approved. Okay, discussion, plan of conservation and development.
There's no meeting.
Nothing? Status report of various projects.
It's kind of winter, so not a heck of a lot going on. It's come before us. I don't think anything. I mean, obviously Ames is down. That's like the big news.
Okay, great. Open space?
Nothing at this time.
Any legislation?
None seen. Nope.
Conferences?
Not at this time.
Correspondence and communications?
We have not received anything.
Okay. Other business?
Yes.
Okay.
We have an ad out for somebody to sit in this chair permanently. So the 20th, it closes for in-house, and we'll see if we have a candidate and go from there.
Okay. All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Thank you, everybody. Have a good month.